I am so overjoyed that Barbie was amazing. I had such high hopes for this film. It's one of those films where I watched the trailer and thought, that looks impeccable. It's either going to be one of the best films ever, or all of the good bits are going to be in the trailer and the film's going to suck. And I'm so glad that it's basically the former. I don't think it was perfect all of the way through, but generally, I had a lot of fun with this. I think there are some really great balanced messages, and visually, it is just an absolute treat, and the cast is incredible. This will be a spoiler free discussion. I think for the most part, I might discuss the ending, but if I do, I will give a spoiler warning. This was released this year, of course, 2023, directed by Greta Gerwig, written by Gerwig and Noah Baumbach. And we have an amazing cast, to name just a few: Margot Robbie, Ryan Gosling, Sharon Rooney, Rhea Perlman is in it, which is one of my personal favourites, Michael Cera, narrated by Helen Mirren. The list just goes on and on. The cast is incredible. And very briefly, the narrative, if you're unaware of what it's about, Barbie wakes up and things are a little bit different. We first get a look at how perfect Barbie Land is, and it's gorgeous, and she lives in her dream house, and everything's pink, and I absolutely love it. But then she wakes up and things are peculiar. She's got flat feet, and there's actually juice in her cup. And she goes to talk to Weird Barbie, who tells her that she needs to go to the real world because somebody is playing with a Barbie and they're having darker thoughts than one would expect to have when playing with a Barbie. So Barbie, off she goes, and she goes into the real world, and she goes into Mattel, and we have Will Ferrell, and he looks amazing. Just there's something so great about the darker coloured suits, the grey suits, and then this pink tie as a pop of colour, and I just absolutely love it. And the costumes in this film have completely blown my mind for two reasons. One is quite simply they look absolutely amazing. But two is that a lot of the costumes are costumes from Barbies that I had as a child. The costumes are by Jacqueline Duran, and in particular, Skating Barbie looks so much like Skating Barbie I had as a child, and it's just so mind blowing and so beautiful and nostalgic. And the design of Barbie Land is just gorgeous, and I absolutely love it. Part of me wishes the whole film was in Barbie Land, but obviously the narrative wouldn't have really worked if that was the case. But the set designs are just phenomenal. I'd love to know where those sets are now, because they're just, particularly Barbie's dream house, just gorgeous. And we have the camper van, and everything's just so stunning. And the amount of research that has clearly gone into this is incredible. It's very self-aware, particularly with a lot of the narration from Helen Mirren. A lot of what she says is very amusing. It's a very funny film, but it does have a slightly more serious overtone of, well, partly feminism and patriarchy, but also fairness and balance. And I won't go into too much detail, but it kind of looks at, first of all, how women don't rule the world as Barbie thinks they do, but also how Ken is very much in Barbie's shadow, and Ken only exists because of Barbie. And without Barbie, who is Ken? Where does Ken live? What does Ken like? We don't really know anything about Ken except through Barbie. And I like that it's not just completely a feminist film, but also a film about gender equality and saying that Ken shouldn't just exist because of Barbie. He should be a person in his own right, and I love that, and I think it's done very well. I also feel like the feminist aspect wasn't quite as in your face as I expected. I wouldn't have minded it if it was, because, speaking as a feminist, it's something that I think is a great topic, and unfortunately always relevant because we still have a long way to go. But at the same time, I feel like you could enjoy the film and not necessarily overlook that part of it, but it wasn't as, there are other things to enjoy as well. So I think they got the balance there really well. I guess the other point is that if a young child is watching it, it's rated 12, I think, but if somebody is not quite old enough to fully grasp a lot of these slightly more political things that are being discussed, there's still a lot of stuff in there to be really thoroughly enjoyed, namely the costumes, the set design, the really great performances. I really thoroughly enjoyed this film. And honestly, the only thing I didn't like was the ending. And I'll discuss what I mean by that in a moment, I think. But I was particularly delighted to see Rhea Perlman in it. She was rather fabulous. Really brilliant film. Casting was spot on. Set designs are gorgeous. The costumes are incredible. It is very funny, very self aware. I don't know if I'd love it as much if I hadn't grown up obsessed with Barbie. I was obsessed with Barbie. I would love to know what somebody thinks of it if they didn't grow up with Barbie. And I guess a lot of that is stereotypically, of course, growing up in the 90s for me, boys didn't play with Barbies, but I know a lot of guys my age have gone to see this film. I don't know a lot of what they think about it, but I know that the audience is very vast and that the film has appealed to a lot of people, which I think is the beautiful thing. Obviously, a lot of it is aimed at people who grew up with Barbie, Barbie fans, but it seems like there's a much wider appeal, and I think that that's a really beautiful thing when you can do a film about a specific toy and people who have never had any interest in that toy can go and see that film and, as far as I'm aware, enjoy it. I think that's a very impressive thing indeed, and the film is very impressive. So I guess tiny spoiler from now, I'll discuss what happens at the ending, and that's mostly because I just didn't love the ending. It's not, I don't know what ending I was wanting, but I don't think that was it. Spoilers from now. But she made a decision after talking to Ruth, and I think the discussion with Ruth was pretty interesting. And she's reevaluating herself, and we realise or are informed that she's done a lot of great things, such as helping mother and daughter bond, the mother, of course, being played by the brilliant America Ferrera, and all of these other great things that she's done, even though she's stereotypical Barbie, and she is in this place in her life where she doesn't know who she wants to be or who she is. And I think we've all been there. And if you haven't, it will come in time. And I think it could appeal to a lot of people in saying you don't have to be who you are or who you're told you are or who you think you have to be. You might be somebody else. And yes, I love that message, but I don't like the fact that Barbie then went, oh, well, I'll just go and be a human instead. Because that's kind of, I don't know, she doesn't know enough about human life to make that decision. She's going through a kind of crisis with her identity, and she's kind of gone to the extreme and decided to cast off her Barbie life and be a human without, at least within the context of the film, spending the time to work out what that would actually mean. She spent a very tiny amount of time away from Barbie Land, and I feel like she just made a giant leap without actually gathering all of the facts, and I don't think it was a very sensible decision. So I kind of didn't love the ending. I would have preferred it if she'd stayed in Barbie Land, but changed the way things were done. And maybe things weren't perfect, or that perfection is not what one should strive for, and that she helped educate the other Barbies on this, and that you don't need to be put in a box, as it very much were. And I think that would have been a much better, more realistic, more meaningful ending than just you're going through an identity crisis, so leave your whole life behind and become somebody else. I don't think that was the right message. But it is literally the last 3 minutes of the film that I didn't like. The rest of it, I really adored it. I had a lot of fun with it. It was absolutely worth the wait, and I'm thrilled to say it's tremendous fun, and I would recommend it for pretty much everybody.